Combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne.
Right along here tonight with Jason Liosatos. And welcome to everybody, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. Celebrate another breath of life, another week we've lived through the never-ending chaos, I should say, versus the ever-evolving chaos. But that's why we're here. That's why we're born. That's why you decided to come here right now to be part of the change. And, you know, this is going to be a really different episode. You know, Ransom's taking a break right now. I'll let him tell you why it is. It's an exciting moment in his life as well. But think about how we talk about change and how we facilitate change. It's very clear that the top levels of whatever country you're in, and Jason's joining us from the UK, 3 a.m. start time. I'm very appreciative you stayed up because we're in a 24-hour world. This is a go-getter here. You know, when somebody starts at 3 a.m., they're ready, taking any chance to talk about what's going on at the levels of small-town politics. Now, you clearly see that across the world, wherever you are at the highest echelons of power, once they get into the presidencies, the premierships, whatever it would be, the prime ministers, that is the parasite class. They've been vetted through how many decades of being a parasite, an elitist, a leisure class, climbing on the backs of others, sociopaths that just don't care, and that's how they got to those positions of power. Now, the world we face now, we're going to have to reverse that. Nothing is going to come from the national level in terms of change. We now see the uniparty in America. It doesn't matter if it's red, blue, elephants, donkeys, they all pass the bills to push us up to what, 53 trillion by the end of this, the no more debt ceiling. We're in a uniparty system, whatever country you're in. So the actual change is going to take place at the local level, where you live in your state, your county, for those of us in the United States. I'll let Jason explain about the levels within the UK there, down in Totnes, et cetera, going all the way to London. But think about that. The only way we're going to really make change is, just like we have been, getting into the school boards, getting into the local level county meetings and moving that direction to make change that then upwells to the state level. It's not going to change any other way, because you're just banging your head against the wall if you think you're going to go from the parasite class down in and you're going to make change in your local neighborhood. And, you know, one thing about the homeowners associations here in the United States, they usurp your constitutional, God-given rights, where they can tell you you can't grow food in your property. They're going to lien your home if you do. Now, what kind of country do we live in where you're forbidden from growing food in your own property, and if you do so, they can put a lien on your home? This is not a country that I knew anything, way, shape, or form that we've grown up into. See, this is the misnomer also, that we need to save whatever institution or country or perception of country that we were in. We need to save it. No, we don't. It's gone. It's so far gone that what we need to do is step into a new era and form that from the beginning as if we had a new bundle of clay that has not been touched. Jason Liosatos, I appreciate you joining me tonight. Now, Jason and I hung out when I was down in Totnes. I'm going to let him just tell his story because, you know, after he told me, I was like, I want everybody in the United States to hear this. BBC's putting hit pieces out on him, otherwise known as, well, I'm sorry, Jason, what'd you call that? Character assassination. You know, it's a little bit different verbiage depending on which country you're in, but it's the same exact thing. Here in America, we know it as a hit piece. So you got the BBC coming out after a gentleman going to run for local politics because they already knew his politics. He hangs out with Piers Corbyn, these kind of people in the UK. So he's already well known. So they didn't want him anywhere close to public office. If you already have an opinion out on the net somewhere, these are the very same things you're going to face. So Jason, the floor is yours. I'm just going to let you talk, and please explain what, everybody would love to hear this, because I was considering running for public office myself. And after listening to you, I was like, all right, well, I already had some problems with the health department, not health department, but the community health center down here. And just it's very local politic. Good old boys club is what they call it. So, it's here too in East Tennessee. But over there in the UK, you have a different but same story. So I appreciate you joining me tonight. Jason Liosatos, all the way from the UK. Take it away.
Hey, David, how you going?
Doing well. I want to hear the story. Everybody's waiting for your story. Bated breath. They're just waiting.
Hey, nice one, mate. Listen, I don't know where to start, really. Well, look, let's put it this way, David. I'll, at the outset of this, I can't stand politics, and I'm sort of a well-known political atheist. Like Gerald Celente would say, I'm borrowing his words there. He's a guest on my show many times. So the thought of me going into politics was to me always completely and utterly absurd, right? So, but I had David Curtin from the Heritage Party on my show, and I had been chatted to some of David's people here. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, like Matt Letitia said very, very succinctly, he said, whoever you vote for is like different cheeks on the same backside, yeah? And I've always said different wings on the same bird. So whatever happens in whichever party comes into power, it seems to me, and jump in and stop me at any time here, David, because I'll be on a roll, yeah? But
roll away, man. This got a 2-hour program. You can roll like a rolling stone. You can roll like a boulder dislodged from a melting glacier down to crush the scientists studying ice melt somewhere.
Okay, man, let's rock and roll. So I've always said for many years, David, whoever you vote for makes no difference. Tomorrow is still slavery. Tomorrow is still the same debt, fear, and struggle for humanity. Okay, so the whole thing's predicated on. I'm putting a base camp in here. The whole thing's predicated on. Sure, if someone came from another planet and said, "What's it predicated on? Your system?" Well, you'd have to say, short-term greed, power, profit, control, debt, slavery for humanity, struggle. Yeah. You're born into it, you die out of it, they charge you for a funeral even at $7,000, okay? Anyway, so I was not into this, and I've always said for many years in my talks and on my shows that my theory is that the royalty in England, for instance, as an example, it was always just about them, and the people could wave their sticks at the royalty, and they just thought, hey, let's just make a couple of parties, man, this and that, and then the people will think they got a choice. We're still in control, whoever they choose. So that's my thing. So I always stayed out of it completely. And I thought, if someone had said to me, you're going into politics, I would have thought you're completely mad. I'll never, ever, ever do that. But the lovely lady, Madeleine, who runs the Heritage Party in Newton Abbot near Totnes, said to me, listen, we've got to do this, because she was from Poland, David, and she said, what's happening in Poland when I was a kid is happening now, It's like Nazi Germany, and it's coming in faster and faster. And like I said to you yesterday, I see the whole thing with this rollout of more control, 15-minute cities and stuff like that. It's like a tide coming in on a beach, one of these very busy beaches, and people keep moving their towels back very slightly. And it's like it's incremental, so people don't notice it, but in the end, your back's to the wall, the harbour wall. You can't go anywhere, and you're going to drown to death with this control. So she said, we've got to get into the local council politics, because she said, if we don't, we're not going to change anything. Now, I'm putting the base camp in here. I've been to Parliament, yeah. I was invited there by a great guy who's been on my show, and he's in there a lot looking at what's going on. And I went there reluctantly and looked inside the belly of the beast, and I didn't like it. It was horrible atmosphere in there. And I was on marches with Tony Benn years ago when the Iraq War stroke one-sided bloody massacre. I mean bloody as in not in swearing, I mean blood, took place, and we were all told we were conspiracy theorists then. I was up there in the student union with Tony Benn. So I've been working on this for a very long time. So I said, no, I'm not going into politics. No way. She said, look, we've got to get into the belly of the beast and try and get into local councils to try and change this for the 15-minute cities. So I really struggled against it, David, and I didn't feel I wanted to do it. And eventually, the Heritage Party with David Curtin, I thought, look, what am I going to do? Maybe I've got to try and change something. So I'm quite well known in the town. You know, I've got my own little art gallery called Liosatos Gallery. I've done many conferences at Dartington Great Hall with people like Brian Geddish from UK Column, all sorts of people. We used to have guests coming from overseas, Robert David Steele, ex-CIA, and we used to beam in sort of people like John Perkins, the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, his book. And we used to do heavy conferences, David, about child sex trafficking, about a better world for humanity. And so I was known in the area, so I thought, okay, well, maybe I've got to step up to the plate and take responsibility and step forward, which I'll be honest with you, I reluctantly did. And a couple of times down the timeline towards the local elections, I actually said, I've got to pull out from this, you know, because I was getting so much flack, because suddenly there was 5,000 leaflets going through doors with my face on it in a suit jacket. On the we had to choose some things from a manifesto to put on the leaflet. And I thought some of the most important things were the trans movement, which they're pushing into schools, and telling little children they can take their time to choose what gender they want to be, and offering them support and puberty blockers and God knows what. That's rolling in really fast, you know, drag time storytelling and stuff like that. And I want to make it clear to everyone here, now I've got gay friends, lesbian friends, and everything in between, and people who swap back and forth. I don't care what you do with your spacesuit. And if you feel like you're in the wrong one, I feel sorry for you. And change it. Change into a man, change into a woman, whatever you want to do. But don't you dare go into schools and push down on little children and give them ideas they never have. So I was quite big on that. So I put that on one of the leaflets. One of those was there, and 5G was on there, and warning people about a dystopian future. Anyway, all these leaflets went out, David. And I'll tell you what, I've never, ever felt such a backlash, even with all those, all my shows I've done with people from David Icke to Noam Chomsky on my show, to Dale Bigtree, you know, the producer of Vax, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Carrie Madej, all these wonderful, great people I've had on my shows over this, not only with lockdown and the pandemic, but also before that, many years before that. I've never ever had such a backlash as I did when I did this and stepped forward, and it was absolutely unbelievable. People stopping me in the streets. Some people were saying well done, and some people were saying we need change. We need something different, because, as I said, it's the different wings on the same bird. At each election, it changes by name only and not nature. The same sort of the same strangling hands of the system keeps going, whoever gets in, basically. We all know that. And even worse is, you know, everything's forgiven and forgotten from the previous president, politician, pope, priest, even, you know. So it's a disgrace. But what do you do? Okay, then you've got to dive in and you've got to try and do something, which I did. I went to the council offices, I registered my name, I did everything David Curtin said to do. And next minute, my name's on flyers all around Totnes. There's gay people coming up to me and coming in my shop and shouting at me, and everything like that. And then there's big 6-foot trans guys coming in my shop with red lipstick and tight skirts with blonde wigs, coming in and telling me it's a disgrace what I'm doing. And the tables turned on me, David. As soon as all those leaflets went through the doors, I was getting people coming out of their houses shouting at me. Some people were saying well done. On my street was very interesting. I live on a street, so you've been to my house, and you know, the atmosphere changed in the street. It was as though I was demonic, you know, in a lot of people's eyes. A threat to the system, you see, David, a threat to the status quo. Because we can discuss this further, jump in and stop me when you want to, obviously. but we can stop that. We can talk about this in depth, because people are like performing chimps and elephants in a circus, almost like prisoners breaking stones in a prison. You know, they don't want things to change, David. It's almost like they've got Stockholm syndrome. And you can say, hey, look, we could possibly make a better system. Where? They'd say. Where is it? Well, we don't know. But listen, we can dig a tunnel out that way. Yeah, but in here, this is the mindset, David. In here, well, they feed us a little bit. It's warmish. They hit us with a stick. But if we go outside this system, if we step outside the box, it could be even worse. This was the mindset, you know. And of course, I've been vilified by the president, or what you would call in the town here, I forgot what you call him, and I'm very sorry, I've got amnesia. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. What is his name? You know, well, I'll say it. His name was
Putintain is his name. Ask me again, and I'll tell you the same.
well, okay. So it's the town. What's that? The mayor of Totnes. Okay. I've even forgotten his name. Maybe it's a good thing I've forgotten his name. His wife's now the mayor. He's left. He called me evil incarnate. I was riding my bicycle through Dartington Gardens. You know, here he is, Jason Liosatos, evil incarnate, in front of his friends, showing off. I didn't know he was the mayor at the time. You know, now this is way before I ran to be part of the Heritage Party. The word had got around that I was this troublemaking, right-wing, far-right conspiracy theorist, sort of an anti-Semitic madman, yeah, who was recruiting people into the right wing and things like this. I don't even know what right wing means. I'm like a political atheist, you know. And Ben Piper, his name was. I've got to say his name, because he was on the Mariana Spring documentaries where they tried to crucify us all. Well, perhaps it's an honor to be crucified. Apparently, a lot of the best people have been crucified, David. But anyway, my point is, it was suddenly things changed, and I didn't like it. I'll be honest with you. You know me, David. I was on the marches with Tony Benn in the Iraq War years ago. I've been with Piers Corbyn in full lockdown in Glastonbury doing talks. I've been filming in London in full lockdown. I was with Gareth Icke and Piers Corbyn and Mohammed Adil and all these great people in Birmingham. I was driving up the motorway in full lockdown to give talks with police drones flying above our heads and surrounded by police on horseback. I was with Piers Corbyn on Glastonbury tour. We were doing talks up there with the police coming over the hill trying to arrest us. So I want to make it clear to people, I'm not a shrinking violet. I'm not a guy who steps backwards when the heat's on. Yeah, when I know there's a terrible problem for humanity and people who haven't been born yet are relying on us now to change this paradigm and to change this trajectory to try and give them some freedom down the timeline. I'm not one to step back, David. So I want to make that clear. So I wasn't frightened to step forward into politics and have my name on 5,000 posters and my face and who I am, because I've always stepped forward and given talks and given conferences and gone and talked anywhere. Not for my own ego, let me make that clear, everybody, because I was embarrassed to see my face on those posters. That's a very important point to make here, David. I was embarrassed to see my face on those posters. I felt really quite, I don't know what it was. It's a very strange feeling, yeah? Even after all the public speaking I've done in the country, you know, I get invited in different places to speak. So this was a different dynamic, because I thought, well, you know, I don't want people to think I'm this egomaniac like most of them often are who go into politics. That said, I must say, put a bit of a caveat in there and say that some people, maybe like Tony Blair, started out in politics with the right mindset. He wanted to make changes, but of course, the further they go up the political ladder, the more ethical compromises they've got to make, or they don't go up the political ladder. And as Robert David Steele said at one of our conferences in Dartington Hall, he said, and what they do then is then at these gigs like on Epstein's Island and stuff, you know, you go to bed with an 18-year-old prostitute and wake up drunk with a 10 or 12-year-old girl in your bed, and they filmed you. That's the gig that keeps these kinds of people with their mouths shut and keeping the donations coming in and protecting their pensions and their salaries. So it's a very complex issue. But my point is, I don't step backward. I step forward when it comes to people's lives who haven't been born yet, who are relying on us now to do something. So in a nutshell, we can go off on different tangents, but that's what happened. And it wasn't a nice experience. I can tell you. I can warn everybody who's thinking of doing it. We've got to do it. I mean, there's Lawrence Fox now. I think it's what's the party? His name's the party. He's a speaker on GB News here in UK. GB News is a great news channel which has popped up with Neil Oliver. Mark Stein was on there, but they kicked him off because he was saying too much, even on GB News. And full marks to Mark Stein, he pulled away from them. But GB News is saying a hell of a lot. And Lawrence Fox has got a program on there. The Reform Party, is it, or the Reclaim Party? I've forgotten. Now, here's the thing I want to say. Jump in, stop me if you want to stop me at this point. But here's the thing I want to say.
No, man, keep rolling. I'll let you roll for another couple minutes, then I'll kind of wrap it up because that was an excellent dinner at your house that we had. We pounded a bunch of wine with Wild John and John Kitson. Yeah. And then did a live with Rex Bear over at Leak Project, and getting all that coordinated for the times and everything. But keep going. Well, yeah.
Here's the thing to round it off. What we're seeing now is, and I was told this by a great mentor of mine 40 years ago, there are a critical time in human history. People will be brought together as if by magic, brought together to create new systems independent of our government control, our current paradigm of government control, you see. So that's what's happening. The Heritage Party's popped up, and I like David Curtin's a great guy, yeah? Very nice guy. He was up in London in the lockdowns like me, walking around, chatting to people, being interviewed. And that's why I got banned off YouTube ultimately, because I was up there doing that with David Icke and people like that. And but what the exciting thing is now, and I wrote about this in my book, The Emergency Transformation of Human Beings, 12 years ago. One of the headings there in the book is a call to all good people in government. And I predicted in there that at some future point, not far down the timeline, people in the lower echelons of government will have to come out and be seen and step forward and say no to this and say, I see this, because if they stayed in there too long, they would be seen to have known the corruption and the lies and the cheating, but they would have stayed in to protect their pensions and their jobs and of course their reputations, because once you stand up against your own government, as is become evident with Andrew Bridgen here in England. Andrew Bridgen was with the Conservative Party. He stepped forward and said, look, this lockdown thing, we got to question it. This vaccine thing, we got to question it. And of course, he was blackballed. They walked out of Parliament when he started talking and questioning about it. So what happened? They booted him out, right? They booted him out. He wasn't allowed to talk about anything other than their party line and their trajectory. What happened then? He's joined Lawrence Fox in the, I wish I could remember the party, Reclaim Party or Reform Party. So what's happening is the strangling hands of the system, the more they strangle you, the more it's automatically creating new systems. It's creating almost like a breakaway civilization where people who don't want to be seen to still be in that Stockholm syndrome, supporting the lying, cheating government, which, by the way, everybody, let me ask you all a question. It's never been any different. Look back in history, possibly thousands of years. They were crucifying people back then, if the whole Jesus story you think is true. And they've always done that. Anyone who stepped forward, whether it's be Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Robert Kennedy, any of these people, what they've done, they've either killed you, or they've made such a fool of you, or put you in prison, Years ago, we couldn't be talking like this. Let's get it straight. And we won't be able to much longer if we don't stand up. So it's a fascinating time where people like Andrew Bridgen are starting to come forward now. People are starting to create new political parties. And there was another gentleman in Totnes who used to be in the council who came up to me the other day and said, well done for stepping forward. He said, we've got to start. And he used to be in politics. He used to be in those council meetings with people like Ben Piper, the ex-mayor who called me evil incarnate and who's picked on people and pushed them on the floor, quite an aggressive sort of gentleman. and eventually he got beaten almost to death in Taunton as he pushed his luck too far, and some guys beat him up. He was on crutches, black eyes, broken leg, or whatever it was, on the front of the newspaper. What it's doing is it's forcing us to create new systems independent of the current government line and control, because we've got to, because it's clear that it's predicated on short-term greed, profit, power, which is the opposite, the complete antithesis to what it should be. Freedom, happiness, joy, a better world for humanity, like the Indians look down the timeline, 9 generations, 6 generations, and work towards a better future for humanity. And at the moment it's not. So what I will say, and end it off by saying, it's the strangling hands are forcing people, like if you put a pillow over someone's face, they will become very, very creative to try and escape that and find something different. But it's not easy, let me tell you, because I've had a sniff of it, and my God, what a division you get. My neighbors over the road, my neighbors down the road. Suddenly I was this evil monster who had popped up, right? and it was amazing, David. I've never felt such a feeling walking down that high street once my face was on those posters. I've never felt such a feeling ever. And I've done shamanic work, I've done shamanic training, so I feel things. I'm not saying I'm a special guy because I do that, but I do feel energies, and I feel stuff. And I feel stuff coming from people's minds. I can feel it, okay? We can all do that. But I've just sort of looked into it a bit more, and when you do, you feel it, and you open those doors a little bit. So I was getting attacked from all sides by people coming in and confronting me. There was one guy around the corner sent me letters, blah 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 blah, and I put him on Facebook, and then the next minute is, I won't say their names. Hey, listen, you're lucky I'm not saying your names, because you deserve to be exposed, because if you're throwing stones at me, you're going to get some back. Make no mistake about it, right? So yeah, I got all sorts of abuse. It was absolutely fascinating, but I got all sorts of positive feedback as well, David. People saying, thank God, we need to change. But once you step into those shoes, you realize the change that needs to take place, because the whole thing's rotten at the core. It is, David. Imagine stepping in there and trying to, it's like putting up an umbrella in a hurricane. Most of the leaders in the world are horribly corrupt in each country. They will generally always go towards profit and power over fairness and ethics and morals. Money change. I've had this conversation with Gerald Salente. Gerald said that it's not the money. You can't point to a pile of money and say it's your fault. No, right. But it ethically compromises people and presses the wrong buttons in people. And it's absolutely disgraceful. It's a sick, horrible, greedy system we're living in. And it's gone completely mad. It's a mental asylum casino. And we've got used to it, and it's almost like, what do we do to change it? But I truly believe, David, the strangling hands have got to strangle us even further with this great digital reset that's coming in, until people will even, like I said, the towels have got to be going to the harbour wall as the tide's coming in, and almost sort of, what shall I say, almost drowning people. For apparently St. John of Patmos, he was the guy who used to baptize people. Apparently he didn't used to smash water on you. He'd hold your head under the water till you were almost choking and dying, and then let you up. And that's when your transformation took place, and the awakening took place, when you were almost dying. And that's what I believe is happening in our system now. There's a lot of people that will go along with it, who've got Stockholm syndrome, and do whatever they're told, and turn on us like they did in lockdown. People turned on me, who I never thought, because I was talking about the corruption of government, yeah. And that's what will happen with these 15-minute cities.
Hey, Jason, could I stop you for a second?
Go, mate.
Well, I do want to thank everybody for joining us on YouTube, but we're going to need to cut the feed right now. So please join us over on Rumble, where we can continue to speak freely. It seems that right now we're borderline on the edge of the censors on YouTube. So we are going to cut the feed on the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast channel, where we broadcast live and stream out live. Remember, you can go to libertylinks.io/solar minimum. Again, that's Liberty Links, like LIBERTYLINKS, Liberty Links, and then put the / in there, and solar minimum, because I always talk about the grand solar minimum, but we'll slide solar minimum.